So, hi everybody, welcome to session number 5000. Is that it? Of the Innovation Cafe. We are here today to learn a bit more, a bit further about how to test business ideas, think, but not just how to test business ideas, but it seems that there are platforms to manage how we do this in our organizations. So today we have an expert in the room, I will say. I'm still trying to learn how to pronounce your name. Is it Gaurav Soni?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's perfect. Fine.
Yeah.
Gaurav is the co-founder of LeanApps, and he will tell us everything about himself, the company, and how we can innovate in a much smarter way. So over to you, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Hugo, and appreciate that to give us the opportunity to speak here. And great. So, yeah, I think my partner has also joined now. So, my name is Gaurav, and I think some of the people I see they are connected with me on LinkedIn. There are some team members as well. So, great. Started 6 years back with my partner Narjeet. He's also in the call. And so the company started with a vague idea. The whole intent of starting the company was to leave our jobs and start something. And that's how our journey started. So we are brothers as well. And it was very easy, comfortable to start the journey together. So we started building products for some of the companies we knew. And yeah, that's how the journey started. We grew and we had a couple of failures, which I'll talk today, where we got in between we wanted to build some product. We went in, we made a lot of mistakes. And I think with that learning, this innovation bug got us only 2 years back, where we started working with the buyer through one of our partners, and we got into this innovation stuff. And with our learning, of course, with our failures, now we could easily correlate that what were the things that we did wrong, what most of the startup innovation teams do, where 9 of 10 ideas fail. So I'm gonna be very practical today, informal, share some experiences that we had while working with innovation teams, how we failed when we did our own startup. And yeah, so let's see how it goes. And yeah, then I think I'll try to wrap it up in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then we can have informal session with the team as well. Perfect. So shall I share my screen, Hugo?
Yes, please go ahead. We have around 30 people waiting, so let's go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Cool. Just a second. I think. Give me a second. Cool. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks Hugo for giving this opportunity to talk on this topic, which is very close to our hearts. And thanks everyone for joining in. My name is Gaurav, and I have my partner Najit and my team Pavel, Ruchir, Devansh in the call. So there's a lot of stuff in the market around innovation. People talk about agile, lean startup, lean innovation, design thinking, design sprint when it comes to idea validation. And some of these terms are confusing for innovation teams, and while they want to choose one strategy to work on new ideas. In fact, one of the innovation managers asked a very interesting question a couple of weeks back when I was talking. Whatever you're talking, eventually all the roads leads to Rome. So what road should I choose while validating my idea? So I think what's important is most of the people choose the toughest path, where they think it's the easiest one, where they start building the product and then go to the market to validate. Rather, we should find a way, a road that helps us reach Rome in the fastest way possible with the minimum toll tax. And today we'll discuss about how we can validate our ideas, which comes through without building a product, and something which we have been implementing with Strategizer and AFCE. These are our partners at Bayer. So what's the agenda today? So we'll talk about how we can structure and come out with the most critical assumptions about the idea through assumption sprint framework that we have created. So we'll learn how to convert assumptions to testable hypotheses. We'll go through some marketing hacks to generate evidence around all the assumptions and hypotheses. And everyone will get free access to all the frameworks and canvases we have prepared, created last year as a team to scale up the innovation journey. So let's start. Uh, so this is one of the slides that I showed. This you would have seen everywhere. Why do 9 out of 10 ideas fail? Now, for an idea to succeed, multiple assumptions need to get validated and validated before you can say that this is a successful idea or a failure. Uh, in our discussions, we usually talk to 8 to 10 innovation teams in a week. And I think every team, most of them, I would say 9 out of 10, believe that their idea is amazing. I have not seen any innovation team saying, oh, my idea is a crap idea and it's bound to succeed. But when we get into other discussions, most of them, are talking about solution, implementation, technology, launching the product. Everyone they really want to launch the product fast, and nobody talks about customer segment and the problems they're solving. The sad part is no one want to go the easy way to validate the idea before building it. So I think as humans, we love doing hard work. We love building things. We are stuck in the build trap, and all of us, I think, we are somehow by God gift great at executing things, and we love it. So, what's the recipe for failure? You have seen the recipe for success, but we'll go talk about recipe of failure today. So, what's common in these nine? Uh, what do you call the nine? What is a common pattern in all these startups that fail? So usually they start with a killer idea with a lot of passion in mind. Idea starts with a solution with a vague definition of customer segment and problems. They do a lot of market research, go through reports from McKinsey, EY, which gives a global perspective, look for similar products in the market. Now, based on the market research, you do some maths on Excel and come out with fancy business plans. Uh, you also go to and talk to your customers or prospects, which will never say no to, which will, of course, not say no to you. Secure funding, assemble the team, and start execution. Now, this keeps the team busy for 5 to 6 months to build their first MVP, launch it, and then the approach is okay. Let's pump in money into marketing and acquire customers. And by the time everyone gets emotionally attached to the product, and in some months after the launch, they get to know that no one is interested in the idea. And this is a pattern that has been across industries, across verticals when it comes to building new products. I want to share a story about a product which we built on our assumptions and in our dream world, which eventually failed. The dreams are very costly for us, so invested around 100,000 euros building a product for restaurants and retail, and the idea and the learning was like very costly in terms of money and time. It was the same challenge that we got emotionally attached to the product, the idea, and we didn't want to quit. We knew that we are failing. Uh, we knew there were signals that were not giving us a positive sign. The problem existed in the market, but we realized very late that people are not willing to pay for that. And the customer segment for us was too big. In fact, one of the partners continued to stay in the dream world and decided to go solo, but we decided to quit. Uh, so I think after today's session, I want at least everyone to take an oath that yeah, we will not build anything, hold our emotions, and focus on validating all our assumptions before we invest even a single penny building the product. Now, this is an innovation funnel we follow with different teams across different innovation companies we work with. So the step one starts with collecting ideas at the company level and filter them based on the strategic fit. The second step is to validate your assumptions and hypotheses. This is where we'll focus today, and this is where you have this plethora of marketing hacks and experiments that you can test with. Then you build your prototype, you validate your idea or solution using design sprint, and the last step is where you start building your first version of the product. So let's start with the first agenda for today: how to structure the most critical assumptions. So what's assumption? So so this is what we have created is assumption sprint. Now that helps you to structure your ideation process. So the framework will help you define and filter your most critical assumptions that can make or break your idea. So what's an assumption? Assumption is a general feeling about a business problem or a customer segment or a solution. It is your belief about how the target market or the customer segment will engage with your idea. So there could be multiple assumptions, like does your customer segment really care about the problem? Do they have any alternatives to resolve the problem? Are they willing to spend enough money to solve the problem? How much are they willing to pay? Are they willing to learn, adapt it, recommend it to their friends, and use it again and again? So this is a step-by-step process we have created to run an assumption sprint. So you start defining with constraints, collect the problems that you have and the customer segment you want to focus on. So you vote on the problems in the customer segment you want to validate, convert them into we believe statements. So we'll go with some examples as well in the upcoming slides. Filter the ones that are very critical for your idea. So criticality here is that if this assumption fails, then my idea is bound to fail. And at the end of the assumption sprint, we collect a lot of we believe that statements for which there is zero to no evidence. And the goal is to take these assumptions and then test it before you build it. So we start with defining the constraints. So this is very important, and we realized in our conversations, in our internal meetings when we were trying to ideate for our marketing strategy, that why constraints are important. That's how this whole thing came together. So when there are no constraints or boundaries, we call it in the idea generation process. Usually, people go with their most intuitive idea based on their gut feel that comes in the mind. Uh, it of course everybody is creative. They want to put their whole idea on the table, but the ideas are unfocused. Sometimes they have no strategic fit. They're not aligned to the company vision, or don't have clear outcomes. Now it becomes challenging for innovation teams to decide what idea or the problem they want to test first, and this ends up generating a lot of random and unfocused ideas. So here are some of the examples which can be used as references to create or set up constraints, so that the teams who are working together. So there will be innovation teams, there will be companies helping innovation teams to build ideas. So they can use this to set constraints before you start using assumption sprints, and which gives a direction to people while dealing with problems with the customer segment. So yeah, you can go through the examples. Later we'll share the presentation. So the second step, which is very important here, is the problem with the customer. And this is a very important step. Looks very easy, but more we have seen a lot of teams fumbling here. So customer segments are generally vague. Problem statements, when they're articulated, they are more like solutions. So this is my favorite slide. So we call this growth box. So what we have done is we have divided the whole thing into 4 quadrants. So before you deep dive into defining a customer segment or the problems objectively, so decide on what you want to focus on. This is also kind of part of constraint. And this brings a common focus to the team so that the ideas generated will be very focused on a specific quadrant. So it could be with the existing customers. So you're dealing with existing customers, you want to deal with the new customer segment, or you're dealing with the completely new customer segment with the new problems. So you can pick and choose and then decide where you want to focus while generating ideas. Uh, this is where we have created our canvases for problem and customer segment. So there are very specific questions that you can answer. Uh, some of the things you will know, some of the things which you will not know, but this is where you will have you will start answering these questions, specific questions around the problem, the customer segment, which will eventually get converted into your we believe statements, and it will help you build your assumptions. And they're free. So there are some of the examples which I wanted to highlight around how to define the problem in the customer segment. So I know some people might feel that this is so easy that you can define a problem in the customer segment. But as I said in my last slide, that this is where a lot of teams struggle. So in fact, I was mentoring a team yesterday. So I'll not take the names, but they were they were working on an idea to help farmers use pesticides in the fields effectively to increase the productivity of the soil. And when I asked them, okay, what's the customer segment? The answer was farmers from Europe and Asia Pacific. Now, APAC and Europe are continents. They're not cafes that you can reach out to your target customers in a couple of weeks or months. Finally, after a, a lot of argument, they decided, okay, let's forget about continents. Let's focus on cities. And in fact, I was still arguing that the cities are big. We have to really nail down maybe to a small place, limited number of farmers, but I'm helping them slowly reach to a minimum testable market. So once you've defined your problems, your customer segment, so this is where you start now voting for the problem in the customer segment. In fact, everything is not important. So here, as a team, you vote together and bring out the most important ones that you want to focus on. Make sure that there are not too many of them, specifically when it comes to customer segments. So you try to, we'll take the examples in the coming slides, so how you can nail down and fix your customer segments initially when you're. And this is the next step where you prioritize the top voted problems. So you start with the one that has got the maximum vote, followed by the next one, and then this is how you base your your problems in the customer segment. This is a step where you convert your prioritized problems of customer segment into we believe statement. So here is an example. So this is taken from one of the workshops where the team was working on a retail product to enhance the experience of customers in store when they're buying grocery stuff. So they wanted to see that our shoppers, the problem was our shoppers are frustrated due to long waiting queues for 20 minutes at the checkout counter. A simple is that you just say, okay, we believe that, and you put the problem statement. Or it could be we have a product, we are solving a problem for X customer segment. We want to focus on now taking it to the next customer segment or new customer segment. So you just say, okay, we believe that this product can fit for the new customer segment. Now, this is the most critical step where you start mapping all your assumptions into this quadrant. So the quadrant we call it is critical and known unknown. So this on the y-axis, if you see, this goes from critical to non-critical, and on the x-axis it's known to unknown. So what it says is that whatever assumptions you have, your goal is to filter out the most critical assumptions that are unknown. So critical and unknown assumptions are the areas which will be tested first when you validate your ID. So once you have your critical assumptions in place, which are critical and unknown, so let's see how you can convert them into a testable hypothesis. It was very confusing initially for me to have a difference between the assumption and hypothesis, but after doing this exercise, I'm able to articulate very clear definition of both. So this is where you convert your we believe statements into hypothesis. So what is hypothesis? It's an educated guess or a prediction about the relationship between two variables. It must be a testable statement, something that you can support or falsify with your evidence. And this is not from me, this is what Wikipedia says. Let's go through the example here. So I'm working on an idea which is still in the validation phase to help smokers in India quit smoking. So the idea is to build a breathing device for smokers who want to quit smoking. So the solution should not be talking solution, but when they breathe in through the device, it will give the indication of the quality of the lungs, which could be red, amber, green, and before they go for the next smoke. So what's the assumption statement here? So what we believe is that we believe that the chain smokers in India who want to quit smoking would be interested in a reasonably priced device to help them monitor their lungs. Now the statement, if you see, is vague. Can it be tested? No. So if we have to convert them into a hypothesis, this is what we reach to. That if we believe that 30% of people living in Delhi who smoke more than 10 cigarettes a day will buy a €100 device to monitor the lungs and quit smoking. Now, if you see the numbers here, so it says 30% of people living in Delhi. So we reduce the target market now from India and the focus is Delhi. Second, what it is that we want to say people who smoke more than 10 cigarettes. The third thing what we did is we put a price to it, where we want to test that, okay, how much are they willing to pay. Now, even if you look at the target market, it's still big. So the population of Delhi is close to 10 million, and if we take 10% of the population who smoke cigarettes, uh, it will be like 1 million. So how do we reach and make our minimum testable market? So that's where you go and do hyper zooming, where you find your minimum viable. So you build your minimum viable hypothesis. You want to build the minimum market that you want to test. So in this step, we'll further hyper zoom and reduce the target market further. So if you see 5 and 6, so if you compare both of them, in 6 it is still testable. So what we did is we said, okay, rather than going targeting the whole Delhi, we'll target a hospital where we can go to a pulmonologist, where there are patients visiting the doctor who are already suffering from the smoking addiction, and why don't we test and validate the idea quickly with them? So while hyper zooming or while defining your minimum testable market, make sure that you don't zoom in so close that your subset of the target market becomes very small, 5 to 10 people who are known to you. You should always be stay away from your relatives, friends. They are not your enemies, but problem is they're very close to you, and they might not give you the right feedback because they would feel bad if telling you the truth if the idea is not great. 100 to 1,000 people. 1,000 is also a big range, but initially starting, so we tested with like 100 people over a week is a good initial number to test your idea. So once you have everything, then the next stage is we get into the experiments. You have your minimum testable market. You know what you want to test. So now's the time to choose your experiment from there. So here, what you do is your first step is to go with your critical assumption or hypothesis that we have seen in the last slide. So you choose one of the experiments from here, which could be a landing page, explainer video, maybe a simple discovery interview. And for us, we choose to do an interview with the smokers for a week. And our success criteria, which is step 3, where you define that, okay, what is it? How will you measure the success, whether the experiment is successful or not? So we said if 30 patients out of 100 say that, yes, we want to buy the device, our hypothesis is correct, will be correct. So step 4 is now we didn't have a device, we didn't have anything. This was the first discussion of the interview. Now, how do we get, if somebody says, yes, I'm interested in the device, how do you get his skin in the game? Now, that's where you want to collect something from the users that you're talking to. So what we did is we collected their email address and phone number so that we can call them, we can reach them when the product is out in the market. So similarly, you can have multiple other ways to collect something from them, which at least gives you some skin in the game. Uh, in terms of time boxing, this is very important. So we time box the whole experiment for 1 week, and of course we extended it further to run multiple into different hospitals and different places. So this is our experiment menu. So here is the experiment menu where you can which you can use to validate your hypothesis or your assumptions. So we have the link in the next slide, which covers the outcomes of the experiment. So you can download that from the presentation. So yeah, I think from an experiment perspective, a lot of time this question comes: should I run one experiment? Should I run multiple experiments? So the maths says that you cannot just rely on one experiment. So you need to run multiple experiments to really arrive to a conclusion with some evidence if the idea is really worth pursuing it or not. But one good thing with experiments is that your decisions that you're taking are not on gut feel, but it's data driven, and of course you go with your gut, but you have data to prove your gut, and you take the right, and you of course you take the right decision over a period of time. So this is the infographic that we created for experiments, which explains when to use what experiment and what to measure. So depending on whether you are in the solution phase, you are at the product building a product market fit phase, you are in the phase of validating your customer segment or your customer segment or your problem, so you can decide and pick. So that's it for today. I really appreciate you listening to the whole story. Let's stay in touch via LinkedIn and Innovation Cafe, Slack channel. It's a great effort put in by Hugo. And yeah, great. So let's go through the questions.
Great. I think it was a masterclass how to test business ideas, also a resume of the lean startup approach. But let's open the session for Q&A, and you have many people in the room today. Let's go, guys. Don't be shy. Okay, so if nobody, the first question is always the hardest, right? But Steph, you are here. Steph is my
no, exactly. Guys, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And it was great to chat too. And also there's a lot of takeaways there for us to learn from. Okay, so I do have a question. Which product and which discovery process and what have been the outstanding projects that you've worked on that have really stuck with you, but also you've done something good out of them? You've not just done the business work, but you've actually made a difference.
Sorry, Steph, can you repeat your question? Actually, the voice was breaking in between. And
so have there been any outstanding projects that you guys have worked on that you feel have made an exponential difference? So it's not just about the business side of it, but it's about making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I think there was one product that we built. I won't be able to share the name of the customer, of course, but because of the NDA. But that really changed people's life because it was built pre-COVID, where we were working to increase the life expectancy of patients who go into ICU. The challenge is when the patients go into ICU, there is something called ARDS. It's a technical term, but in a layman language, this is where you're put on a ventilator and your recovery chances are very less. And then there is a lot of data stats for the doctors to decide what to do next with you. And this is exactly the same condition which is happening for COVID patients, though we were not doing, we never knew that COVID is coming. However, that team, that research or the product that we did really helped the team to deal with the COVID situation. So what was done there was that all the data that you have for the patient, like their oxygen level or their blood reports, their chest x-rays. So all this data is fed to an AI platform, which generates a lot of reports, and it gives you an ARDS score that what's the probability of this patient going to an ICU condition. And this helps doctors to take decisions very fast, which initially was delayed because all these reports have to be collected manually, brought it to the doctor, and it takes weeks by the time the patient might just go into ICU and might die. So that was one of the, I think, product which really changed my thought or my vision of getting into healthcare, because we spoke to a couple of patients, did interviews, spoke to a couple of doctors. So that was one of the interesting project that we did with one of the innovation teams.
Just to add to that, I would say with this project, one of the learnings is like healthcare is very complicated, first thing. Second thing is you're not validating. So if you validate an idea with a patient for which you're building the product, it's not enough. You have to go validate with insurance. You have to go validate with the doctors. So in this case, we validated it with doctors and the patients, which was great. But now, because it's in hospital, you need to create a viability for the hospital management. Why should they invest in a product? So there has to be an angle towards saving costs for the hospital. And so you have these 4 or 5 different stakeholders you're kind of running around. Now imagine if you, in a healthcare, you start building the product and you don't validate this. How much time? I think they spend easily around 3 to 4 years to just build something which can be brought to the market for all these stakeholders. And testing, of course, it was much smaller, slower than the other industries. We were able to do all of this in 4 to 5 months, going through these 4 or 5 different stakeholders very, very fast.
Every 2 weeks, we were doing iterations in the design, in prototyping, and going to the doctors, taking their feedback, And I think it was very interesting. And then finally, yes, we said this is now there, which is very close to the user need or the user requirement, which can now go into the first version of building your product. The biggest challenge for us was learning this. So I remember when we went to the first call, we didn't have any clue on what ARDS is. What is this lung condition? How does a patient go into ICU? What's ventilation? How does a ventilator work? And these were all like set of 10 doctors that were talking to us, and we were looking. So it took us like 3-4 days as a team to go through all the YouTube videos and understand, okay, how this whole thing works. And I think after that, we were so confident that we sounded like doctors when we were talking to them, though we were not. So it's really challenging usually working with tech teams when it comes to understanding and talking their language. So sometimes you have to, go a level low, or sometimes you have to go a level high, which is a bit difficult to, simplify talking in the same language together.
So
I also personally share another story around.
Whenever we talk about seed B and all. So anything, Manju, we need to do.
Sorry, I think, was that a question?
That was a bit.
The plan was to get it closed and start the training for UAT. The setup was done, but there were issues, as I said yesterday as well. So team is working on that. And the plan is to close those issues by Monday first half, and then our SMEs will actually take a look at it all because they need to prepare for the training as well once the environment is fixed. So Monday and Tuesday, basically they will prepare, and I think Daisy will also look into the environment on Tuesday as well. So that's the reason we were requesting for training to be moved to Wednesday.
Is somebody's phone call?
So has it been agreed with the development leads or deployment leads?
I guess so, yeah.
I guess it was a phone call. I just muted our guest. No worries. I was trying to understand.
Peeking into someone other's business.
Yeah.
So I've just spotted that there's a question on the chat. Hugo, do you want to do or do you want me to grab it?
Go ahead, Steph.
Okay. So this is from Hernan. Hi, Hernan. How do you sell or convince a company that you don't consider this valuable to invest in on testing? Okay, right. I see where you're coming from. So, and how much percentage-wise do you think we need to invest in this process compared with development? Okay.
Well, are you going to take it or?
Yeah, I can take it. I mean, in this case, I think one of the things is, management has to have a buy-in in experimentation. And I think they do understand experimentation. That's what I'm coming to. Like they're already used to doing something called of market research, user research, but experimentation kind of gives more data. And this is part of education which needs to happen. That how is it different from these things? So I've spoken to now people who invest a lot of money in focus groups and running some surveys and all those kind of things, which we kind of try to educate. These are opinions coming from the customer. Rather, you need a behavior. Opinion is basically you are trying to look into a crystal ball and say what is going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to be true. What you need to really know is you need to kind of go to actual behavior, whether they are actually putting money on the table, whether they're putting time on the table for you when you're presenting the whatever you're trying to test, the feasibility, viability, desirability kind of things.
So Naji, just one question to that point. So obviously human behavioral science is something that has seen exponential rise recently. Do you think that there's an overlap with what you're doing of more incorporation of neuroscience and human behavioral science into your processes? And also additionally to your point before, companies for so long have really focused on time efficiency. Okay, or how do we get an answer from A to B? And we've lost that opportunity to explore and to test hypothesis. And do you think that there's a massive cultural shift for corporate businesses to move away from being focused on let's fix the problem, A to B efficiency, go, to really kind of almost retrofitting from the big problem? Where would perfect be? How do we get there? Let's experiment to get there.
I think in this scenario, yes, there is kind of, I would say, this behavioral science and what we're talking about is kind of linked to this. The reason is you will eventually get an answer. I mean, that's something which needs to be understood. You will eventually get an answer. The experimentation only helps you get those answers as a first step. What you're trying to do is you will build a product. Let's say that's the scenario you're going to take. You start building the product. You put 6 months, 8 months into it. You go to the market. You will spend some dollar values on marketing. You'll get some users to use it, but they will not be active. They will just come there. They will see it and they will never return. Now you'll start hunting. What's happening here? Why are they not using my product? Why are they not coming back? And then you start trying to get the answers, which you can easily get without writing a single line of code early on. And the second part of this is that one of the convincing areas around convincing your management is that, see, most of them, I mean, if I pick up the data, you get $1 billion idea out of 250. If you go and check the VC data, very simple. So if you only invest in, let's say, 10 ideas or 20 ideas, testing, let's say, it'll take you decades to get there. So how can you move faster? How can you go through these 250 to get that one, which will bring you $1 billion right? Test. It's going to be 2 months, 3 months testing. And you have those, you can test easily around 50 to 100 ideas in that space. And then you just need to scale up testing. And if you can scale up testing, and these are small investments done on a lot of ideas, most of them will be killed. Yes, we know that. But we'll be failing very, very cheaply, very, very fast to reach the ones which are going to give us returns. And that's what we see at Bayer. I mean, we have really tested and we've gone through this 3-year journey, which is 400 ideas is what they started on the top of the funnel. And they have 25 products left over at the end, out of which 17 went back to the core. And now they have $1 billion new revenue coming from that. Now, this is what they're published, at least. I don't know what is the reality, but this is what they're published in this. But this is possible. The thing is, what they did really well is they really scaled up their testing. So they were testing hundreds of ideas a year, and they were killing most of them.
This is something which is not a rocket science, because if you see the culture of Amazon or Google, this is what they do. Like, one of my friends worked for Amazon, and he was working on Alexa. And we know, okay, Alexa is out, right? It's market. But there are 10 such Alexa products which are going inside Amazon, which nobody knows. And it's so chaotic that all these small teams are just experimenting and trying to build something. And of course, you do 50 to 100 experiments, but you only see the top products coming out. But then there are so many products which are being experimented internally that comes out. Right? It's more like learning from them and implementing it in your companies. I think the challenge for innovation is, what we have learned is, every organization is at a different stage. Like, if you see Bayer today, I think initially the stage they started was at the learning stage, that, okay, let's learn how we can innovate. Because if you talk to a couple of companies, most of them are like typical R&Ds, tech-driven innovation. When it comes to, okay, marketing, no, we are not the right people to talk to. You should go to the marketing department. So I think it's now changing. In fact, I was talking to one guy yesterday in Sao Paulo. So, and he brought it very effectively, that now innovation is not like tech innovation, but it's more driven by marketing now, right? How we can use marketing, how we can use smart hacks to really go and test our ideas. So so I think to answer that question, how we sell and convince, it's more our first approach is to see where this company is sitting at which stage. And based on the stage, we say, okay, that maybe you're not ready right now, so we are not the right partners for you. But when you get ready and you want to really experiment, even if you want to do your first experiment, call us and we'll help you. And if you're really into the products, yes, product is already there. But that's, as I said, all the roads still go to Rome, but you need to find the fastest way and the cheapest way to reach there.
I would say everybody who's sitting in front of the computer, you want to see the failure rate, search Google Graveyard, or there is Microsoft Morgue.
Microsoft. Okay.
It's a very good website. Indeed, we have a very pragmatic question here. Talking about experiments, how much money should you spend, or what percentage probably of the budget, or how much marketing should be done for a landing page to validate the problem? So how much should you spend of your time, budget, availability, whatever, to come up with experiments?
So we have seen like teams are spending anything between, let's say, an average of, let's say, anything between 1,000 to 2,000 per experiment in euros. And they are able to run around 5 to 8 experiments for 10K. Or if they want to go more aggressive towards the aggressive teams, usually spend around 20K. So they double it and they run around 15 experiments in this scenario. We are working on something which is almost finished here. So every experiment can have, like, will bring a data point. So we are trying to create a formula where if you plug in your data points for each and every experiment, there is a probability meter we are kind of building on, which is, it starts with 10%. If you have a positive result outcome, it goes to 30. But if it, again, so the third experiment is, let's say, negative, which is not meeting your goal, it pushes you back to the 10% mark. So it keeps on going in. And we have tested it few teams, and we see that they get to see the right business model or the right problem and customer segment around at least 9 to 10 different experiments they have to run to go there.
So small bets, right? Small bets, de-risking.
They're very, so they are like, I think, weekly experiments, but I think if you remember one of the slides where I mentioned that you have to have at least 6 to 7 experiments, which can go more depending on what do you want to test or what's your assumption. So if you're going with, say, 1 or 2 problems, you can test it with 5, 6 experiments. But if you really want to see the results coming out, the evidence, it has to be over a period of time. Different continents, different places, people behavior will change, how they adapt to your product, how they adapt to the problems, that will change. So a lot of things get together. But yeah, and I think from a cost perspective, what we have done is, so we have a package where we say, okay, you can take, I think 5 experiments, if I'm not wrong, right? It's like for 10,000 euros, which you can pick up and then choose. So based on which stage, if you see the infographic, remember that. So what stage you are, but most of them are actually at the validation of problem and customer segment. So you have these experiments, you can pick and choose and quickly run. And as you grow, you scale up your data. So you start with the minimum testable number, and then as and when you're growing, your experiments will change. So that's how it usually goes.
So if I split this on from a corporate level, I would say they are spending testing one business idea around 50K. How it's split is usually around 20 to 30K goes into mentoring, coaching, learning. So it's more of educational piece. So teams are coming from corporate, so they need to be educated. So there is a like Strategizer or Academy for Corporate Entrepreneurship we work with. These guys would do the coaching. They have e-learning courses, certifications around lean startup. So a lot of theory. And then for execution of experiments, they will spend another 10 to 20K. So this is how they split this 50K. Once the idea,
yeah, sorry, please go ahead. Sorry, Najit.
Once they are done with that, so now let's say there are 20 ideas they test, they will come back to 3 to 4 ideas which actually make sense for them to further invest. So in this they will put around 150 to 200K investment per idea, in which they will develop a product, and then they'll bring it to the market, acquire some early users, make them active, and they will also try to test can they convert them into paid users. So they don't scale up the product because that comes later. Right now, you're trying to pick up around 20 to 30 users, 40 users to use the product, understand how they're behaving, get the data analytics in place, just answering all those unknowns around, how are you going to, so product market fit unknown questions. And this is the investment around 150 to 200K they spend.
Testing with early adopters before investing a lot of money, trying to jump to the late majority. Yeah, we've had here, you talked about Strategizer. Tendai Vicky was one of our guests recently, and he talked about many of these things. In talking about entrepreneurship, there's a question here asking, while we are voting or using the dot voting technique, how do we overcome the founder's bias for our product and what is important? It's a very good question. I know the pain.
This is a typical, this is a very political question, and yes, and that's the reason this process has been created. So it's so usually what happens is in this ideation process, this is how you call it the hippo culture, where the management tries to push their ideas, right? And that's in fact when we were doing our surveys a long time back, we were trying to validate the whole thing. This was the biggest problem that came on the table. I think the solution is as such no, but with these like the vote, this whole framework that you see, so it's no talking framework. So what you're doing is you're just putting your idea on the table, taking it, and then there are people voting it. So it's more like democracy. However, it still depends on the organization culture, that how do they really take it. In some of the companies, when we tried implementing this process, it really worked. It showed value to the employees. It showed value to the management as well. However, in some companies which are more management driven, hippo driven, yes, it becomes difficult. So it's but you slowly take, so always, changes are always changes takes time. So you have to start with some step, start implementing it, maybe go agile, put it in one team, one small team, start building that culture. And once these teams go out and work with other teams, they will adapt the culture.
So I'll take an analogy here, which I usually explain it to founders. It's like you're getting into a relationship, really. So you don't go and ask the person to marry you on the first date. So you go date, you get to know the person. That's your experimentation, right there. Is it the right fit for me? Is it something which I can go further with? Should I go for a second date? What does the data, what does my feeling or the data says? So you continue to do that, and then you go and change your relationship level and more investment. Now, when it comes to breakup, the longer you have been in a relationship, the breakup will be much more difficult for you. It's the same thing which happens that last 6 months of your relationship, if you're in a relationship for a long time, you're there just because you feel it might get better. So you're in last 50K or 100K or 200K what you spend on your product without killing it. It's just you already know it that it's not going to work, but you still spend it just maybe it works. Maybe the next day would be better. So the more investment, the more time, the more cost you're going to put in your idea, it's going to be difficult to break up. So you need to kind of, that's why you're trying to be emotionally detached early on. And then experiment is a good way to do that.
I think we created a process around this, which was called alignment sprint, because a lot of people we spoke to, this was one of the biggest problems. They said, okay, how do we align with the management? Where they are not pushing their ideas, but there is a democracy where we can also put our ideas together. I'm trying to find the link, but I'm not sure, Devansh, if you're there on the call, if you can share that alignment sprint link, might be helpful for people to go through it and then use the framework to align with the management on all these ideas.
We have another good question here by Felipe Di Gregorio. The process was sequential, evaluating multiple ideas before developing the solution, the innovation pipeline, right? So many tech companies have a more mature development pipeline than an innovation pipeline. So what are the pros and cons of following an idea experimentation process before developing compared to dev teams adding continuous experimentation to their development process?
So if I understand that question correctly, it's so there are two, like experimentation is a little bit confusing when it comes to there is business model experimentation, which happens. The product doesn't exist. You're trying to validate first before you build. And there is an experiment which you do directly on the product because one thing which you need to understand, everybody needs to understand, experimentation never stops. It is always going to be part of your life. Because whichever stage you are in, you'll have a next unknown which you want to validate. So you want to kind of build an experiment around that. So now, if it's on the product, that's most of the time what you're trying to do is you're trying to improvise your funnel. So that's more towards experimentation around growth, which you do on the product, and that's what I think. This question is about what the pros and cons of following an idea experimentation process before developing compared to dev teams adding continuous experiment to you. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, if it doesn't exist, you kind of do these marketing experiments, which Gaurav shared earlier. But if you're on the product, you already have a product, you like booking.com, you would go and see, they have these 30 more people are viewing this property, or we just, you just missed this property, that property. All of these are experiments on the product. So that you probably, if Hugo and I are looking at the product and opening this booking.com, we might have a different view because we are probably in different customer segment for them, and they will be running some experiments on that. And from the interviews I've done with them, they run around thousands of experiments on the product directly every year. And this is just, they're checking how many people are responding to this experiment. They have this closed goal on the product. This is a totally different science which happens on the product. Both are important. Both are important based on where you are.
So in terms of this whole experimentation is, so don't think like it's in isolation. It's integrated with the whole process. So the examples that we gave are more for innovation teams where they're doing the existing product. But if you remember the quadrant and you're focusing on your existing product with existing problems, then that fits well with your existing feature. So for example, you want to build one X feature. Now the approach of product development is, okay, let's write a user story, let's define the acceptance criteria, let's put all the estimation together and start building it and launch it. But if you see the experiment approach, what you can do is, before launching it and building it, you quickly build a simple UX, how the user is going to interact with that feature, put some fake buttons there, and you just want to measure, okay, how many people really go on that feature, how many clicks do they do, what did they really click, and put that in your product, bundle it, launch it, collect the data, and see and decide based on your success criteria as you see. So the same framework can be used for your existing products as well. And based on that, you decide, okay, should I build this feature or should I not build this feature?
Right.
We have another good question here, in probably the last one. We are running out of time, which is good. A lot of people, a lot of interest, good topic. So the question is about fake checkout in experiments. How do you make fake checkout when your brand value is very high and it can affect your brand negatively? It's a good one.
Well, that's yeah.
So in this case, I think we do off-brand testing. Very, very simple answer. When a buyer or Airbus or these companies, when they're working with us, we ask them, do you want to do brand? You want to share the brand, or you want to do off-brand testing? Whenever there is an off-brand testing, we are the startup. It has nothing to do with the corporate company. So you just do an off-brand testing. The second thing which I would add is, it's kind of, some people also question this ethical part of, you're lying to me. Or you're lying to the user. So this is, I think, it depends on where you are. I mean, what we do is, when we are trying to do, let's say, a fake checkout or also this fake button, what we do is we try to create something very, very small which can still help the user. It could be like, you're trying to improve your life in a particular area. I don't know. I mean, whatever that area is, let's say health, you want to improve your health. We're not automating anything which will help you, but we might create these are the 10 points you can, like a checklist, 10 points which you can improve your health with. It's nothing. It's a very simple PDF or something. We're not solving a problem. I know they click a button expecting something else, but we give a very small gift, or you can say to cover that ethical ground, like, at least give you something back to the user for clicking that button. So this is what we try to do. And off-brand.
Actually, it depends on the ideas. In fact, what happens is, with the brand, a lot of companies decide, okay, we'll not use a brand. And in fact, I was reading one of the articles that, for example, I launch a product X, say with Amazon. Now people are so obsessed with Amazon that if you're running your experiment with your own brand, then people might just go with your product because it says Amazon. So I think even the data that you collect while experiments might not give you the real picture, because you want to see that people really go with the product or they really go with the brand. So it's usually when you're in the innovation phase and you're testing ideas, it's always recommended not to go with the brand, stay away from the brand. And a lot of new ideas that we do with the companies, they usually, what they do is they pick up a product name and then that becomes a logo. And then you see it, because when you're going to the users, you're going to the users with zero bias. You don't want to bias them with the brand. And that's where you start, you get the real stuff or the real data. A startup has to be a startup. So imagine it's a startup within the organization, within the enterprise, but it has to be like a startup. Treat it like a startup.
Steph, do you want to wrap up?
Perfect.
I think Steph is muted.
I think someone needs to do a song called "I Can't Find the Mute Button." Guys, that was absolutely fantastic, and it's been really insightful. Also, from a personal perspective, it's always great to talk about marketing and brand, because that's my sweet spot. And in innovation, particularly, brand marketing people seem to kind of miss the curve. The innovation is actually leading because we're directly talking to consumers and people, and that's the place that we should really start innovation.
Yep.
So guys, thank you so much. It's been fabulous.
thanks everyone, and yeah, appreciate that. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's continue. Let's see what we can add more value. So we'll see you in future. Thanks everyone.
Hope to see you all in tomorrow. Sorry, today we have another session at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
London time with Michael Sack. So hope to see you all. In PS, Michael was the father and inventor of a famous game called Command and Conquer Red Alert. I spent a lot of money playing that game. Probably you guys as well. So don't miss the session later in the day. Thank you all and have a nice evening or a nice day.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Thanks. Yeah, bye.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye. Thanks.